After spending the night at Debbie and Scott's cabin, as planned, Capella left Ayla behind. Following Byron's orders, he left several exhortations to learn to live well in that place. Yes, this was where, in Byron's setting, Ayla hailing Weishafen grew up, missing at the hands of her nanny. The same thing happened in his past life. Ayla was discovered by a couple living isolated deep in the mountains and became their adopted daughter. The house was then burned down in a bandit attack, and Ayla, having lost her adoptive parents, survived alone and made her way to the neighboring village, where she discovered that she was the only princess of the missing Duke of Weishafen. Ayla, then 16 years old, spent more than 2 months with the couple and became familiar with their lives. Just to avenge his father. To avoid the suspicions of Roderick and Ophelia, and to pretend to be their daughter. But what I didn't know then is that Byron would kill Debbie and Scott to make this made-up story more believable. This would explain why Ayla had not been found and there would be no more problems, since the couple who would have witnessed it had been murdered. But the couple was too good to be sacrificed for such a conspiracy. They were truly heartbroken by the story that Ayla and Capella had made up, and they treated them lovingly so that they could be calm and comfortable during their stay. Although her mother, who said she would be back soon, did not return, instead of being upset by the guesthouse owner, they comforted her by telling her that everything would be fine and that her mother would return soon. She was devastated when the couple, along with this small but cozy cabin, was completely destroyed. Looking back on it now, he believed it was the first time he doubted what his father did. Of course, Ayla forced herself to think not to do it right away, and dispelled her doubts by telling herself that her father was doing the right thing. A wave of regret washed over her, but she struggled to suppress it. Remembering his past nonsense didn't change anything. The important thing was what to do from now on. "Madam, sir. This time it won't happen. Without a doubt. I will protect you both." Ayla made some mental promises to herself as she made lunch with Debbie. To protect them, he even received permission from Winfred to use the imperial palace. While he was thinking like this and skillfully pruning the vegetables in the garden, Debbie approached him with a kind smile and spoke to him. "My God, how can Ayla cook so well? You're not just pretty." She had already been with them once in her past life, so she was used to it. Feeling strangely uncomfortable receiving praise, Ayla blushed and murmured, "No." Even at 16, they had been generous with their praise, but now that she was a little younger, the couple seemed to be more forgiving of her. "Oh, come on, I forgot to pick some basil leaves." Debbie, who was about to start cooking with the ingredients Ayla had prepared, clapped her hands as if she had forgotten. "I'll be right back, ma'am." When Ayla, who had just cut the vegetables and was empty-handed, offered to go, Debbie asked in an embarrassed voice. "Well? Do you know where the basil is?" "Yes, ma'am." He nodded and left the cabin. Debbie and Scott were amazed at how Ayla could learn the local geography so quickly, but it was possible because this place wasn't that different from the past, or rather, 3 years in the future. It was as if time had stopped there. He approached the herb garden growing in a corner of the garden and was gathering herbs when he suddenly felt a presence nearby and turned around. It was still early for Scott to return from his trip to retrieve the fish trap he had left in the nearby creek, and there were no signs of wildlife moving around. And, above all, it was the presence of someone quite familiar to her. "Cloud, don't hide and watch, come out." As he spoke, keeping an eye on Debbie inside the cabin to see if she could hear her, a familiar figure emerged from behind a tree. "Mississippi. What are you doing here?" "It is an order from my master. Protect the young girl." It was inexplicable why Cloud, so skilled at hiding his emotions that he had fooled everyone, including her, so quickly, lied so easily. Ayla snorted. "Isn't it surveillance?" And Cloud didn't answer. It seemed that his prediction was correct. "I have to go in. If it's going to take a long time, I'll do it later." If it's something I can finish quickly, just tell me what's important. Ayla spoke in a cold voice as she picked basil leaves. The master suspects the young woman. He conveyed his message briefly and clearly. When he heard the order to kill Noah, it seemed that his inability to control his expression was the cause of his problem. Oh really? No, I just told him I was worried about hurting a newborn, and he seemed to accept it. However, I thought I should be more careful in the future. Ayla held the basil leaf in her hand and looked at Cloud for a moment, feeling a strange sensation. Wasn't it strange that he, who once hated her so much that he wanted to kill her, was now really worried about her and helping her? And he even betrayed the man he always called master. Yeah. Are you going to keep hanging around me? Then behave so as not to surprise the guys. She was used to this type of stalking and ambushing, but it was clear that the couple who had been living alone for so long would be scared if they happened to see Cloud. When Ayla said this with a small sigh, Cloud bowed his head briefly as if he was following the order. Yes, miss. And then Cloud hid behind the trees again. Ayla, are you here yet? Debbie stuck her head out of the cabin and called out to her. It's all done, ma'am. I'll be right back. When dealing with Cloud, her voice was cold as ice, but when Debbie called her, Ayla responded with a childish and sweet voice, as if nothing had happened. Cloud, hiding behind a large tree, watched her until she completely disappeared into the cabin. It was an expression that indicated that his mind was incredibly complex. The war against the Sikkim tribe ended, as always, with a human victory. It was also a short-lived war that would never be repeated in history. The reason the war ended so quickly was largely due to the efforts of Roderick and the Weishafen Knights. The Knights of Weishafen, who had always served as protectors of the empire for generations, now boasted such exceptional capabilities that they could be considered at their peak. And above all, the decisive blow that brought about a quick end to the war came when Roderick himself rushed into enemy lines and captured the enemy leader. The Sikkim tribe, having lost its mind, was disorganized and finally had no choice but to surrender. The entire army could not be withdrawn, as a small group of Sikkim unwilling to retreat remained and raided nearby villages, but the fire was extinguished for the time being. So Roderick left the finishing touches to others and hurried back home. Even after not seeing each other for a few days, the babies the same age as Noah grew so quickly that they were unrecognizable. Imagine how much your young son must have grown while on the battlefield. He felt like his entire body was going to explode as he quickly hugged Ophelia and Noah. Welcome, Roderick. You have worked hard. And when he got home, Ophelia was there waiting for him at the front door. Noah, who had grown so much while she hadn't seen him, was there too, held in his nanny's arms. Roderick looked at his wife and son with an uneasy expression. He longed to hug them, but he had been in such a hurry to get home that he hadn't even washed himself properly, leaving him a dirty mess. I'll go wash and come back. He tried to hug Ophelia without dirtying her, but finally gave up and ran towards the house. Ophelia, who was laughing as she watched her gruff husband wave his arms like a bird, also smiled and entered the mansion. Roderick went straight to the bathroom and cleaned himself off. She dried her wet hair with a soft towel and went out. As expected from a soldier who had been to the front so many times, his muscular body, visible through his robe, was covered with scars here and there. Roderick, who was looking around with a towel on his head, finally noticed a strange feeling of unease filling the mansion. The atmosphere among the employees preparing him to change clothes was somewhat chaotic, and the house was not as clean and tidy as before. Roderick, after putting on comfortable clothes, hurried to the baby's room. There was a reason why she wanted to hear directly about how much weight Noah had gained, but more importantly, she wanted to quickly hear from Ophelia what had happened at the mansion during her absence. Ophelia, what happened? Why is there such a chaotic atmosphere in the house? Roderick asked in a soft, cautious voice, worried that it would seem like he was scolding her. Of course, Ophelia, who knew perfectly well that her husband would not criticize her for such things, did not take it that way at all. "Oh, that's..." Ophelia began to speak as she held her young son in her arms in front of her husband, who had just returned from a fresh shower. Noah, whom he was holding in his arms, seemed to have grown considerably in size and weight, and felt quite heavy. Suddenly, one by one, our employees quit, and now we are down to the bare minimum. Noah is still young, and I can't hire new people on my own. So we were waiting for you to come,